Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sir Jude, and here is the video lecture for our lesson this last Friday for Galileo, Pasteur, and Bell, and this morning for Einstein and Edison. No, so let's review first the first two evidence of evolution by matching the definitions in column A to their corresponding terminologies in column B. So number one, gradual changes over time. This phrase pertains to none other than um, letter B, evolution. For number two, traces or remains of organisms. This phrase pertains to letter C, fossils. Number three, different structures but same functions. This phrase pertains to letter D, analogous structures. Number four, same structures but different functions. This phrase pertains to letter E, homologous structures. Right? Next. Oops. Number five, comparison of structures and functions. This is the second evidence, comparative morphology, letter A. And lastly, structures that were functional before but insignificant today. That's letter F, vestigial structures. All right. Next part. Um, let's determine the comparative anatomy of each pair of structures and justify why. So we have four organisms and their chosen part here. We have cat's leg, whale's flipper, praying mantis's leg, and water boatman flipper leg. Let us answer first um, the functions of each part. So for cat leg, it is used for walking. So to walk. For whale flipper, it is used for swimming or to swim. Praying mantis leg is used to walk. And the water boatman flipper leg is used to swim. Okay, sorry um for the internet disconnection for a while. Let me just write the functions of each structure. So for both cat leg and praying mantis leg, both are used to walk, while the whale flipper and the water boatman flipper leg both are used for swim. Let's determine the comparative anatomy of each pair of structures and justify why. Let's start with cat leg and whale flipper. So these two. Okay. So both of them have the same bone structures, evidenced by the similarities in colors, but they have different structures. So therefore, letter A is homologous. For letter B, cat leg and praying mantis leg, no? They have different structures, but they perform the same function, which is walking. Therefore, letter B is analogous. Letter C, we have the whale flipper and water boatman flipper leg. Different structures, but they perform the same function. Therefore, letter C is analogous. And letter D, we have praying mantis leg and water boatman flipper leg. This one. They have the same bone structures, but they perform different functions. So letter D is analogous. All right, next part. So we're done with both homologous and analogous structures. Let's tackle vestigial structures, no? When we say vestigial structures, these are structures that were have significant functions during during the organism's ancestors, but they have insignificant functions nowadays. So let's explain the vestigial nature of these structures in each animal. Let's start with ostrich's wings. So ostrich have wings, and wings are used for flying, but ostriches cannot fly due to their weight. That's why wings for them are useless. They can fly, but only for a short for a small height or for a short amount of time. But don't expect them to like literally levitate because of their extreme or heavy weight. Okay. For snake hind legs, they are vestigial to snakes because snakes are always crawling and hind legs are used for walking, making hind legs unnecessary to them. And lastly, for cavefish's eyes, you cannot see their eyes because they are covered now by scales. So therefore, they cannot literally see. They don't even need to use their eyes anymore. Instead, when it comes to survival, they rely to their other senses. All right. Let's now proceed to the third evidence of evolution. So we have biogeography. When we say biogeography, these are changes in the geographical distribution of organisms. Okay. So we have six factors of affecting biogeography. We have climate, geographical isolation, historical events, human activities, physical barriers, and species um, interaction. So let's answer the question, in which country are these organisms primarily found? So for kangaroo, it's Australia. For the panda, it's China. And for tarsier, it's the Philippines. Okay. Um, you might be wondering why this set of animals are always found, or most of them are found in like a certain country. That's because you have to factor the first factor, which is geographical isolation. So probably their ancestors were separated, or likely they were situated long before in this area before. Kaya, of course, doon na sila nag-thrive, nag-reproduce, nag-survive, and aside from tourist spots, no, these are the reasons why some tourists go to respective countries para makita yung mga animals na doon lang usually matatagpuan or makikita. Okay, so that's geographical isolation for you. Let's proceed to the second one. So let's have a scenario here. Long ago, mule and white-tailed deer cohabitated in a grassland until a mountain range separated them. So when you see a mule deer, it is represented by the golden brown coat. Okay, and the white-tailed deer, they are represented by the ones with brown coat. Now, how will you describe the distribution of each deer species in the western and eastern parts of the mountain range? So on the west, because of there is a mountain range that separated them, therefore, the western side of the mountain range is populated mostly with mule deer, while the eastern side of the mountain range is now populated with the white-tailed deer. Therefore, the factor affecting biogeography here is the physical barriers. And the physical barrier in our example is the mountain range. Okay, next. Sorry for that. Let's list the continents where the following fossils were unearthed. There are five continents here, from left to right. It's South America, Africa, India, Antarctica, and Australia. And we have four fossils: Cyanognathrus, Glossopteris, Lissosaurus, and Mesosaurus. So now, let's identify or list the fossils where the following fossils were unearthed. Let's start with Cyanognathrus first. Cyanognathrus is a wolf-sized mammal ancestor during the Triassic times, no? And it is found in two continents, so South America and Africa. Okay. For Glossopteris, wherein the fossil marks are represented by the blue-green color, no? Glossoptera is a seed fern, existed during the Permian times, no? So we have South America, Africa, India, Antarctica, and Australia. So basically, all five of the continents featured here. For Lystrosaurus, represented by the color brown streak, it is a pig-sized herbivorous mammal ancestor during the Permian to Triassic times. And these fossils were found on Africa, India, and Antarctica. And now finally for Mesosaurus, an aquatic reptile that existed during the Permian times, no? Um, its fossils were found on, just like in Sinagnathus, South America and Africa. So you might be wondering what is the significance or purpose of this part, no? What do you think happened to the continents before and now? So obviously the dinosaurs couldn't pass nowadays when the continents were separated at this moment because their size will prevent them or rather or they might drown, no? And we can assume that long ago or millions of years ago, no, that these continents were joined together into one supercontinent called Pangaea. Okay, and the factor affecting biogeography here is none other than um, historical events. Okay, so we're now halfway towards the factor, so three down, three to go. Next is number four, the easiest of the six. No? What temperature conditions do cacti and polar bears prefer? So cacti is the plural for cactus, and we know that cacti prefer living and thriving at hot deserts, while for polar bears they prefer to live in cold Arctic regions. So therefore, the factor affecting biogeography here is climate. Okay? Next, yeah. This one, although pagpipilian na lang natin is between human activities and species interaction. Let's analyze first what type of relationship is illustrated in each pair of species. So we have commensalism, competition, mutualism, parasitism, and predation as our choices. No? Let's start with the bee and the pollen grains from a certain flower. No? So these two exhibit mutualism, wherein both of them benefit from each other. So bees can extract or obtain pollen from the flower. And once the bee transfers the pollen grain to another flower of the same species, therefore, more flowers of that same species will grow and bloom. Kaya mutualism. Nobody's hurting each other. Both both do something that will be advantageous for each other. This is the healthiest type of relationship out of the five. Okay. Next is we have infestation of tapeworm in a dog's intestines. No, this one is parasitism because one of them benefits and one of them is harmed. The one who benefits is the tapeworm, absorbing all the nutrients from the dog or of the dog, and one is harmed, which is the dog because it is being victimized. No, okay. Third, we have the shark, and beside the shark are a group of remoras, no? The group of remoras follow the shark's direction so they can go to an area wherein there is a lot of food supply. This one is the most probably the unique one, commensalism, and the most unfamiliar one, no? Because one benefits and one is unharmed. The one that benefits here are the remoras because they follow where the shark goes in order to secure a healthy food supply. While nobody is unharmed, and the one unharmed is, the only species unharmed here is the shark, no? Because the shark doesn't gain anything from the remoras, and at the same time, they don't get hurt by the remoras. Kaya the shark is the one unharmed here. Next, we have two rhinoceroses fighting against each other. So this is competition or the fight for survival. Usually, the three most common reasons why organisms fight is food or pagkain, territory or their shelter or place or location, and lastly is mate or the potential partner. Okay, next is predation. So you have a snake swallowing a rat, or probably before it swallowed, it was tawag dito, kumbaga nalabasan ng kamandag, no? Or venom. So in predation, one of them wins, which is the snake, and one of them dies, which is the rat. And of the five relationships here, all of them exemplify species interaction as the factor affecting biogeography here. Okay? Of course, yung pang-anim na factor is human activities. So which set of activities will likely increase or decrease the population of organisms? So on the left side, you have hunting and overfishing, deforestation, pollution, urbanization, and introduction of invasive species. At the right side, you have conservation of wildlife protection, reforestation, captive breeding, stocking and restocking, and habitat restoration. So the set of activities that will likely increase the population of organisms are the ones on the right, while the set of activities that will likely decrease the population of organisms are the ones on the left. And the sad thing here is this one is due to humans or to by people, no? Kaya everybody contributes to everybody's tawag dito, evolution, growth, and sometimes even death, knowingly and unknowingly. All right, so those are the six factors affecting biogeography. Number one is geographical isolation. Number two is physical barriers. Number three is historical events. Number four is climate. Number five is species interaction, and number six is human activities. Now let's answer the following questions. A bird population became separated when some birds reached an island. After many generations, the island birds developed many beaks and feeding behaviors. Why did the island birds evolve differently? So as you can see, we have four birds here, two of which have small beaks, which are three and four. So if you have small beaks, you can only eat small size of food. And for one and two, they have big beaks, and because of that, they can eat large amounts of food. No? So why did the islands birds evolve differently? That's because letter D, isolation allowed the population to evolve independently, which is an offshoot of the first factor, which is called geographical isolation. Okay, next is number four. So, you have two species of lizards separated by a river, no? So the brown lizard, I'll call them by their color codes, no? So the brown lizard, some of them remains brown, some of them turn green. Okay, we don't know why. And at the population B, which originated populated with green lizards, no? Some of them turn brown, some of them turn green or different colors. So what does this event suggest about the lizard populations? The answer is letter B. They evolved independently and may have become separate species. Not exactly different because lizards are still lizards, but they have now different traits that were different as to what they were, especially when they were not separated or were still joined together. Okay. And finally, last slide, number five. Farmers repeatedly use pesticides to kill crop-eating insects. After many generations, more insects survive. How did the pesticide affect the insect's evolution? This scenario is an application of human activities because human activities use pesticide, no? And the answer here is letter A. Favored insects with inherited resistance over generations. No? I wouldn't say that some of you are tempted to answer letter C, cause species to develop resistance because they needed it. I wouldn't go so far to say that the sprays automatically make the insects resistant. What it's just that, for example, when you spray all these three insects here, and the second one in the middle survives, no, and the rest of other two side by side die, then therefore the farmer or sorry, the crop eating insect was able to develop resistance against the pesticide. And as a consequence, their succeeding offspring will also, assuming it's a dominant trait now, will also um, assume that type of trait, non, which is that insect with resistance to uh, which is resistance when it comes to pesticides. Okay, the answer is letter A. All right. So that's all for our session today. I hope you were able to still remember and recall, especially now that the term examination is fast approaching. But in the meantime, I want you to take a rest. There's no homework. Uh, Please review our previous lessons. See you tomorrow and take care and stay safe. Goodbye.